everyone. Welcome to our panel on wellness. I am joined today by Jahnavi and Nadia. Jahnavi started a wonderful Instagram account called Your Guide to Mental Health, and Nadia started an Instagram account called Green Illness that tackles eating disorders.
So as you guys know, my name is Janvi. I'm going to be doing a BSc in psychology next year. And the reason why I started this page is because I've had a personal experience with depression and anxiety for over a year now. And it kind of really inspired me because it kind of enlightened me on the systemic flaws that exist not just within like how we embrace the topic of mental illness, but how schools, how healthcare systems kind of don't really support the recovery of mental illness survivors. So yeah.
So I struggle with an eating disorder myself, so that's what led me to start Green Illness, simply because of the whole lack of awareness around eating disorders. So I just felt there was a huge gap to be filled in terms of knowledge. So I think there's a very fine line between healthy and unhealthy competition. And I feel like especially in TISB, it definitely is a very competitive environment. So I feel like the first thing would be that just realizing that someone else's success doesn't equate to your failure. I think the biggest thing in a competitive environment is realizing that helping someone else doesn't mean you're losing out from it, and just an entire collective effort to just be a lot more empathetic. And sometimes people just need to be listened to, I guess. So just be better listeners as a whole. And there's always this constant pressure of someone always being ahead of you, especially when you're in a competitive environment. And so you dealt with this continuous feeling of like being inadequate just because from all the comparisons you draw, and just realizing you're you, someone else is going to be doing their thing, you're going to be doing your thing, and just focus on yourself.
I think with my experience, there was a lot of comparison as well. And I feel like I was constantly worried about, like, I feel like there's always like a culture in school where you have to be doing something, otherwise you're wasting your time. And I think that kind of stops you from taking like the break you need and from like healing yourself. So I think definitely not to worry as much and kind of taking the like break you need and knowing whatever pace you're at is what you need, and it doesn't have to be at any other level as somebody else. So yeah. Well, one, I want to start off by saying that like studies have shown that social media is correlated with worsening symptoms of anxiety and depression. But I don't personally believe that social media has to be a negative thing. I think it's about how you use it. So I think simple things like putting a time limit on how much you use these apps daily. And I think especially for me, I think even if you go to any therapist, they tell you that if you are suffering from a severe mental illness, to do a social media cleanse, because it you already have low self-esteem, you already have self-doubt, and then you click onto Instagram and Snapchat and you see the superficial highs of everyone's life, and there goes your cycle of self-deprecation and comparison. So I think doing a cleanse is super important. But if that's not possible, like I said, I think putting a time limit on how much you use these apps every day, and kind of reinventing the way you use these apps. So I think if you're following someone who makes you feel a little bit upset, um, or for example, if you're having low self-esteem about your body, like following those fitness influencers or like Victoria's Secret models isn't really going to help you feel that much better about yourself. So I think replacing those kinds of pages that you follow with something a little bit more positive, motivational, I think anything that can kind of soothe you on the bad days and can add to your mood is important.
So I think with social media, it definitely leaves a lot of people with a crippling sense of self. And I think the first step would obviously be to just like understand that social media is just a curated version of everyone's life. So comparing your life to that one picture of someone isn't really going to help you. And it's obviously the highlight reel. You're not going to post things you don't want other people to see. So in that process, we're just setting unrealistic expectations for everyone in terms of beauty standards, social life, all of that. And this constant sense of perfectionism, like that you see on social media just leads to all these comparisons that obviously isn't going to help you. And another big thing with social media is individuality is kind of looked down upon. So everyone feels this need to sort of fit into this same sort of beauty norms and everything. So just realizing that social media isn't real life, just being mindful when using it. Okay, so I think first off is just realizing even if everyone in the world ate the same, exercised the same, you're not going to look the same. We all have different bodies. So striving to fit into that one sense of what's good or it isn't going to help you. So I think just realizing that taking care of yourself and your body is so important. And when it comes to helping someone with an eating disorder, I'd say the first most important thing is stray away from making comments that say, oh, you need to eat, because all that's going to do is sort of push them further away from you. And instead focus on placing importance on the mental turmoil that they're facing and sort of relieve that, instead of constantly streaming them with comments on, oh, you need to eat, because that's not helping them. And I think when it comes to recovery from an eating disorder, it's a lot of people think it's, oh, they've gained weight, they've probably recovered, but I think recovery is more of a mental sort of process than the physical changes, and it's about reworking your sort of relationship with food all over again. And I think progress, no matter how big, how small, is still always progress. And I think most importantly, just listen, always be available to talk. And another thing would be relapse. When it comes to eating disorders, it's very common to slip back into your old habits. And I think just realizing, don't be discouraged by that. You can always, recovery is not linear. So you might have slip-ups, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have a bad body week, a bad body month. And as long as you aim to sort of move forward, you're doing good. Sort of when it comes to eating disorders, a lot of people tend to sort of isolate themselves from their friends and family. And what other people usually take this as a sign of is, oh, they probably don't like me, I should stay away.
Yeah.
But I think it's just that voice in their head telling them, oh no, I can't go to that event, I can't go to that party, everyone's gonna focus on what I'm eating or how much I'm eating or what I'm doing. And so I think just realizing that that voice distorts that individual's perceptions of certain things. So friends wishing to help, maybe like they might be distortedly interpreted as someone, they would see friends as someone wanting to hinder or get in the way of their progress of like cutting back on food, adding new food rules. Yeah.
I think another thing I would really recommend, especially for someone who doesn't have access to a professional therapist, would be to journal. So it's journaling in any form, right? It can be, you can keep an art journal, you can write in the form of poetry, music lyrics, or just, it doesn't even have to be coherent words. It can just be how you feel. And I think not just doing this on the low days, but I think every day can really help you give a physical release to your emotions, while also I think giving you a fresh perspective on your irrational thoughts, which then helps you correct those irrational thoughts. And another thing I would really recommend, and I know that this probably sounds really hard to somebody who's super stressed and overwhelmed with work, would be to just exercise and meditate. Like, I know most of us, when we associate yoga with like old people and like it's boring, but I feel like it's something that you definitely should do, especially for people who have clinical anxiety. It's something I've done and I hated it at first. But in the lockdown, I think it really helped me. So yeah, and I think especially in lockdown, I would say try and set weekly or monthly goals for yourself. And I think because once you cross off those goals, it can really help build motivation. And you can even try doing this with like a buddy or like a sibling, or a parent. And I think that can really also bring in some playfulness and competitiveness when you're doing those things. And you can have somebody to kind of look after you and push you on the days you don't want to do it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing these things. I think that when you're going through something, I think people around you tend to have a lot of opinions, and that kind of helps. It's like people have certain labels and definitions on how you're supposed to feel during a certain time, and so I think when I was going through depression and anxiety, I felt really scared to speak to my parents and to my friends about like, oh, I need a break, or oh, I can't give this exam, or oh, I can't go to school. um, I think that environment just kind of made it hard for me to ask for help. So I would tell anyone who's going through it to understand the space and time that they need and allow themselves that time, even if they have to fight for it. Um, and I think that prioritizing mental health before anything else, I think especially during college applications, it's like there's such an environment, oh, like, oh, this is life, like you can't stop now, you can't give up now. I kind of think that's a wrong thing to say and a wrong thing to believe, because once you spiral, it can be really hard to recover. So I think knowing, just take as much time as you need and don't let anybody else define your recovery time. I think reading helped me a lot. I think that like with even stress or even a mental illness comes extreme loneliness. And sometimes your mind kind of convinces you that you're incredibly alone, even if that's not the case, right? People have incredible support systems and still feel at the end of the day that they're absolutely alone in this. But I think reading books by people who have gone through it, I think reading blogs, I think following mental health advocates on Instagram has kind of not just made me feel less alone, but kind of understand my symptoms better, because everybody has such a unique experience with a mental illness. Some people have certain symptoms, some people don't. And that kind of brings in a whole different range of emotions. But I think reading is something that I found really therapeutic, and I would recommend it to anybody who kind of wants to understand and I think empathize with themselves more.
I feel the information that you sort of expose yourself to do really influence your thoughts. So like John, we mentioned before, any sort of social media pages that, are just going to make you feel worse about yourself, there's no point following them. And I think there's also, when it comes to certain people too, if you feel they're not adding value to your lives, or they're just putting you into a more negative mind frame, I'd say cut them off. Like, I know it's so hard, it's so much easier said than done, but anything that isn't helping you is definitely straight away from it. So yeah, and just exposing yourself to more positive information, positive people, because at the end, that's what's going to shape your thoughts.
I think it's hard to take that step to cut out certain people. So I think like if you have a friend or if you have a relative who's going through something like this, I think kind of doing a kind of social media cleanse with them, so they feel a little bit less intimidated by the whole process. So I would recommend
someone
that
to
as
like
well.
keep you like accountable and on track as well, I think, because I'm one of those people who will just like quit social media and be back on it in an hour. I think that's all of us, honestly. Like nowadays, it's
Yeah.
so hard to stay away from.
I really like Matt Haig. He's a British author, and he had severe depression and anxiety for I think about 10 years. And the reason why like he's also now an Instagram influencer. And I really like his books, and I really like what he says, because some of his things are so simple but powerful, I think, and I post them on my page all the time. He talks about how he had the illness for 10 years straight, but like till today, he has no idea why he had it. And that anybody who tried to shame him for like, oh, you have everything, why are you still feeling this way, was instantly like, he stayed away. And I think he takes so much pressure off of certain aspects when it comes to having a mental illness. It kind of helps you feel at ease. So I would definitely recommend you guys checking him out.
So I love this page by this lady called Haley Goodrich. She posts really good content on just topics like self-love, body image, self-esteem.
I even really like Shaheen Bhatt. Do you guys know of her?
Oh,
She's
yeah, okay.
Yeah, like I really, really liked her book, and I think she's coming out with a second one. So I think you guys, she also has like, for example, she has a reading book club on Instagram, which is also related to mental health. And then she has another account where she posts videos, like she and her team post videos. So I think that content is also extremely relevant, and I really like it. So you guys should check that out as well.
I mean, personally, if I'm having a low day, I'll look at like puppy Instagrams. I think, that's always a good idea.
Yeah.
As intimidating as it is, I personally I feel that throwing yourself into like different mixers and social events during first year, which are extremely popular, would be really helpful. I think the thing about universities abroad is they tend to have really diverse like events to kind of welcome you into your first year. But a lot of us don't actually know about it. So I think contacting your university, because a lot of the times, like for example, your Indian representative is going to be super helpful about this. And I think combing through their websites, you'll kind of learn that there's something for everyone out there, and it'll probably match your interests as well. For example, like I'm going to be studying at Exeter, and I was going through their student clubs, and they have everything like from like pole dancing club to Harry Potter club to vegan club. So I think that there's a place for everyone. And I would recommend just kind of putting yourself out there first before the intimidation gets a little bit too much and overwhelms you for too long.
I'm gonna add on to that and say that like a lot of these, at least a lot of American universities actively promote their clubs, right? So you will have like a main spot on campus, and in your first week, all the clubs will be there, and they'll be trying to get you to join them. They'll be flyering, and they'll be doing all that stuff, and take advantage of it, right? Because for at least in my university, they do it like maybe 3 times a year, but after the first time, like places get filled up. So take advantage of the first week, really throw yourself out there, really explore, because there is a place for everybody.
And I just think for a lot of people, their
Okay,
social
Nadia?
anxiety before they even get started is like, oh, this person's gonna hate me. When they're already talking to someone, they're just like, this person hates me, I should just go away, I shouldn't talk to them. So I think if you deal with social anxiety, definitely find ways to sort of challenge these thoughts instead of like conforming to them, because you're just gonna have a very rough time after.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to remember when you're at university, especially like in your first year, is that you're all in the same boat. You're all new there. Even if you know a few people from school, it's not going to be the majority of the people there. So I think you just have to remember that, like, even if you think someone's going to think you're weird for trying to talk to them, they're most likely going to feel really, really grateful that somebody tried to talk to them on their first day there. And I think just dealing with loneliness in general, like maybe you miss Bollywood music or, the food or anything about home. There's lots of really great ways to like get back in touch with that. Like you could join so for us, we have a Hindu Sock, which is like the Indian Society. And like they host Bollywood nights and mixers. And so even if I'm just missing home, I can just go to one of those and like, it's like I'm home again, basically. And I think just loneliness in general, everyone feels lonely sometimes. And everyone feels stressed, and loneliness is a very stressful thing as well. But if you're a person who's prone to feeling lonely, I would definitely recommend that you try and get a double room or like a triple. Try to avoid getting a single room, because if you get a double, then you're gonna literally have a friend instantly, and you're never gonna be alone, which has its pros and cons, I'll tell you that, but you're never gonna be alone.
If you do feel lonely, a lot of universities have psychological resources and have centers. Mine's called like CAPS, I think, and they also have other activities. Like every Thursday, my university has therapy fluffies. So therapy dogs come to campus, and they're there for an hour, and it's free.
That's so nice.
Yeah, and you just could go and pet them every Thursday, and I'm there. Like I'm there every Thursday.
Yeah.
It's great, and it's the resources are there. The resources are there for you on campus, especially if you know you have anxiety already, and you need to reach out. You know that you should be comfortable knowing that there are resources there for you on campus.
Yeah, I think just adding on to that is like, going into university, you should definitely try and get a feel of what, like, A, the culture of that university is, and B, like, you should know about all the resources you have on campus, like the wellness center, or, you know, student like peers, or anyone, because there's always going to be people to help you and the resources to help you. And it's just doubly like more effective if you know where to find them.
I think just a lot of people use food as a way to cope when they're in a distressed state. So I feel just it's of course okay to indulge in all of that and not feel guilty about it, but using food as a coping mechanism instead of relying on other sources can obviously lead to you having a very unhealthy relationship with food and your own body. So I think just finding other things that work for you than using food as a way to sort of let out your emotions. So like John, we mentioned journaling, meditation, things, other activities you like. So yeah.
I think it's definitely a hard transition because, like, even either when you're in boarding school or when you're like at home, you constantly have all your meals planned out and made for you. And I think after a while, you kind of get tired of eating out, which is what most people do. And then right after eating out, you kind of develop this like guiltiness over like, oh my God, I've eaten this or I've eaten so much. So I think kind of preparing yourself by, like, I mean, I think even in the US, I think after like 1 or 2 years, you have to move out. So I think it's rather you, like, especially with lockdown, we have so much time to prepare ourselves, like kind of prepare yourself with like healthy but like yummy recipes that you like, that are easy to make, because eventually you're gonna have to learn how to make it anyway. And I think really just realizing what works for you in terms of eating and setting realistic goals in university about eating. I think at university, yeah, again, I wanted to speak about this freshman 15. I think, I don't know, I mean, I haven't really like met anybody who's had serious, like, I don't know, I feel like that also causes a lot of anxiety around attending university. And I think that we should kind of discourage the whole conversation. Like, yes, you are going to have like fluctuations in your weight and your eating habits. But I think that as long as you are kind of prepared for that, I don't think it's going to be as bad as you think it is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about the freshman 15 thing. That is something that was like always at the back of my head. I think for the first like 6 months that I was at university, um, I think another thing that's really important to keep in mind in the US is that like you are going to see a lot of fast food around you. It is a very fast food centric country, unfortunately, and there you're going to see a lot of snacks around you. And all of that's okay, but I think with anything that you do in nutrition, it is important to do like your research before, so you know, like if like it's completely fine to eat like unhealthy for a while, but like all make sure that it's all relative, right? And that you're balancing stuff out. And the good thing is that a lot of US universities do try to provide healthy options. So the options are there. Now, your university's food might not be the best in the world, but like the options are there for you. Yeah, if you want to utilize them.
I think also there are a lot of like student led like gyms and like exercise classes and stuff, that honestly like they're either free or like they're not that expensive at all. So I think even if you go and make sure you sign up and time for once or twice a week, I think that makes a huge difference as well. And
Yeah,
if
and
I
that's
think if
another
you
really
start,
great way to make friends, to just like
yeah.
dive into that kind of thing. And it's a really fun thing to do as well.
One of
Continue.
our rec classes was like how to make fajitas. And then salsa dancing was another one, and then my RA did one on like did a dance class for like hip hop. So there are like a lot of options. Yeah, when it comes to that.
And I also just feel that diet cultures created like this really unrealistic idea of I'm gonna eat this much for breakfast today and the rest of the week, Monday to Sunday, and that you one day you don't follow that and then you fall into the cycle of guilt, and then the next day you're like, oh, I already fell off the track. Now I need to, and then you get into the super negative vicious cycle. And yeah, I just think just normalizing that you're gonna eat more one day, you're not gonna eat as much the next day, you might eat a bit healthier one day, not as healthy the next day, and that's super okay.
Yeah, I think it's like definitely a big shift because, like Genevieve said, you know, like we were being provided 3 meals a day and we were not in charge for the most part. So I think it's just kind of knowing your body, knowing how much you need to eat, what you need to eat, and try not to skip meals. You know, I think just kind of following the most basic rules can make the biggest difference to you. Like, I know a lot of people in exam season, they just tend to either binge or just skip their meals entirely under the guise of studying. But I think that if you just manage to stick to your basic 3 meals a day, even if it's just like a coffee and like a muffin in the morning, you're making some kind of progress. And you know, you'll study better, you'll function better, hopefully you'll be in a better mood. And yeah, I think there's only so much Domino's you can eat as well. And it's also about choosing, because like Shyla said, that the campus will provide some healthy options. So if there's lasagna and then there's like Brussels sprouts and you choose the lasagna, that might be okay the first 2, 3 days, but at least have the Brussels sprouts like on the side to have some kind of green.
I think it's similar to what I said before. I think sign up as early as you can to as many things, even though it might seem intimidating at first. I think one, you're committing to an activity to do like once a week, twice a week. And I think after some time, you're going to get exposed to the same bunch of people and you're bound to have fun getting to know them while doing the activity. So I think that's definitely like one way to ensure that you are going to be socially interacting with other people.
I don't know. I'm honestly the type of person who doesn't really need necessarily a large group of friends, and so for me, I was a perfectly happy like getting to know maybe like one or two or even like 3 or 4 people at the most this year, but just knowing them really, really well. And I think one thing is really great about university and big universities and small universities as well is that if you're really worried about how a person like your person how a person is going to think about you, and you're really worried about the impression that you're going to make, and like and let's say like you start hanging out with this person and you really like decide that, you know what, they're just not for me, like I don't want to be their friend anymore, it's fine. You're at a university where your like class size is 7,000 people or like even like 400 people, move on, right? Like there are still so many people
Yeah.
out there, and there are still so many people that are willing to be your friends. Like it's a certain mentality to have. It's definitely different from high school where there was like 150 people and they all knew each other super super well, right? Like it's obviously a completely different mentality to adopt, but I think that's what really worked for me, keeping in mind that like, and even if somebody stops talking to you, don't take it personally, just like move on, right? Like I think that's something that is really important to keep in mind, at least for the first few months of universities. And obviously joining clubs, I think that's something that's like super important. um Specifically, I think like the Indian community is large at like most US universities, and I'm sure it's like a pretty large in most UK universities as well.
Sizable.
It's there, it's present, and they're always having events, especially in the first few months, because they know, right? Like they know we have international students coming, we have like people from all over America coming to our school, and we want them to like mix, we want them to like hang out together, and we want them to make friends. So go to those events, because yeah, yeah, I think that's like something that was super helpful for me. And I personally lived in a triple, and I lived in an apartment style building where there were 7 girls in my apartment. And even if like they don't have to be your best friends, but they are people that you can talk to. So even if you are not a morning person and you don't like talking to anybody in the morning, say hi, ask them how they're doing, ask them what class they're going to, you know? Like it small talk is like really really useful, and it has the potential to start like a really really strong friendship. So I would say like integrating and talking to the people that you're living with is something is extremely important if you are living with people, obviously. But yeah.
I think another really great way, I don't know if US universities do this so much, but Janvi, for the UK, most universities on Facebook will have like a freshers group. Yeah. So like they have, you know, and all of you are new and none of you know each other. So just to kind of have this like even playing field and just kind of even just saying hi. I know that now it's called sliding into DMs, but when you're on a university group with people who don't know each other, it's completely different because you all know that you're just trying to know someone when you get there. And I actually met like a few of my best friends through that group, and we were already like tight when university started. And that I think really helped me. And I mean, I wasn't really one for clubs and societies. So as much as, you know, like I've been saying, join clubs and societies, I didn't really. But that was also because I had such a good friend group going in already that, you know, just going to parties together, studying together, going out to eat. And I think it's definitely one thing that I would recommend doing is if you know that you're going to a university where not that many people from your school have been before. Like I was the first person from TISB to go to Royal Holloway. So there was literally nobody who I like knew from school. But I think to have a friend from school, like if you're lucky enough to have a friend from school just in that university, even if you weren't that close while you were in school, it's worth like reaching out and just kind of building a bridge because it's someone from home. It's someone who's been through the exact same things, or not exact, but closely the same things in the last at least 2 years. So I think it's worth kind of maintaining your school contacts for as long as you can. Yeah, I think making friends is not as hard as people think it's going to be.
Yeah, adding to the Facebook group thing,
Mm-hmm.
I would just say take a leap of faith because I've recently started participating. And people have actually been really welcoming and nice, and like it's really allowed me to get a sense of who they are, and like you said, understand the culture and the vibe of the university. So I think that I really enjoyed like participating and speaking to them, getting to know people. So I think it's definitely a great way to like feel a bit more prepared before college starts.
Yeah, but I also think that one thing that a lot of people really want to do when they go to college is that they decide that they want to reinvent themselves and they want to be someone completely new. That's all well and good, but at the end of the day, especially when you're making friends, you have to be true to yourself. You should not try to be someone who you're not, because if you want to be friends with someone in the long run, they're gonna find out who you are sooner or
Yeah.
later. So for me, you know, I could have decided I'm gonna go to university and I'm gonna turn into a vegan person who, you know, parties and does drugs. And that's just not who I am. That's not who I am as a person. And if you are that person, there are people for you. But if you're a person like me who enjoys parties, does not party really hard, and it's just kind of okay to be in on a few nights, then to find people to do that with is just as enjoyable as the other experience. So to have a vision of like, yeah, my college life has to be, you know, like parties every night and frat row and all these things, you should just remove all those thoughts from your head and do whatever you're comfortable with, because there will always be people for you.
A lot of people have this sort of pressure to like have a bigger social circle, and I feel like just realizing it's okay to have fewer friends who you're closer to. Like there's no pressure to be friends with like 50 people, and just yeah. And I think like you mentioned, while college is a good place to sort of have a fresh start, set realistic expectations for yourselves, because if you end up making it like your New Year's resolutions, you're just gonna have this pressure and you're just gonna fall back on it real quick.
Yeah. I also want to say, I feel like when we first like go to college, this is based on what I've heard, obviously, but like there are no restrictions, right? And I feel like there's a lot of peer pressure even then to kind of drink and go out and go clubbing, which not everybody is comfortable with. But I think even like being Indian, when there's a smaller group of people who are doing that, I think you tend to feel uncomfortable saying no. So I think kind of um, having those expectations and preparing how to say no will kind of really help you like prevent awkward circumstances later.
And I think if like you say no and they take it poorly, then you should know that those aren't like the kind of people you want to be around.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I don't want to be out in the cold until 4 a.m. today. I'm sorry. And if they take that like a personal attack, I don't know if that's the kind of person that you want to
Yeah.
surround yourself with. So like,
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of like a reflection of what you want and who you are. So like, as long as you're kind of really open about who you are, or even if you're like a really private person, everyone gives off like vibes. So you decide your vibe, obviously, and that'll set the tone for the kind of people you attract. But then again, you shouldn't be overly conscious of what kind of vibe you're setting, because then you're going to start trying to change it or adapt it, and that's unnecessary. Once again, this is not to say don't step outside your comfort zone, because you definitely should. Try everything. Try everything once. Every society will have taster sessions, mixers. Just go, and you might be surprised. You know, you never know where you're going to find people that you like.
When I was applying to universities, I think I had a lot of like teachers and college counselors tell me, you should take a gap year, and like you've not been well, and you don't have the grades, and like I don't think you should apply. And I think for the longest time I kind of believed them. And this is a true story, guys. So like on the day I was sending out like my UCAS application, I told my counselor, you know what, I'm changing all the names. So I kind of changed her list completely, and I said I'd rather go to university where I think I have the capability to thrive in. So I kind of changed. Like there was not one single university I applied to which she had recommended. And I got into 3 out of 5 of those. I think don't let anybody, like, yes, of course, you have to be realistic with this process, especially if you've had a bad year and your grades aren't up to the mark. But I think also they do view your applications holistically. Like I know for a fact that if I got in on my own merit, it's definitely not because of my grades, it's because of everything else I've done on my extracurriculars, which they probably like loved, and they wanted to give me an option to go study there. So I think kind of relying onto those things and not letting anybody pressure you into doing something you don't want to do.
Yeah, I think that's like, I think when we imagine like people who are looking at our college applications, we just imagine these like really old, really stern, like they're just looking like, oh, she doesn't have a 38, she can't come here kind of people.
Yeah.
But you know, if you've ever gone into an admissions office, it's such a like diverse set of people. And it's not like one person is going to be deciding your fate there. Ultimately, maybe it'll be, but everybody looks at your application. And so, yeah, like John said, don't let anyone like, first of all, that would take a huge toll on your mental health. And I'm so sorry that somebody said something like that to you. But like, I don't think you should let anyone dictate A, what you want, or B, like what they think would be best for you. Because a lot of times, you know, college counselors to their own merit are working from an angle where they're just trying to get you into college. It's their job. But if obviously they're not going to know you personally or what's best for you, which is shameless plug here, why Mentor Me is such a great program, because you know
Yes,
a lot
definitely.
more about what it's. But yeah, I think, yeah, don't let anyone dictate what you should or shouldn't do. Do what makes you happy, and like, you know, don't like worry so much. I know that that's such a stupid thing to say, especially when we're having a panel on anxiety and stuff, but like sometimes it's just better to switch off and just let go and not think about anything, no matter how hard that might be. Even if it's just for 30 seconds, just enjoy what you've accomplished, enjoy how far you've come. Definitely go follow both of their pages on Instagram. We will link them below.